Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the Interrail Eurorail book tag, part 3. So this tag is the third in a series that was created by Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. He had created these tags last in the summer of 2021. I done the first one then, the first part, but just time got away from me. I got too busy. I couldn't do part 2 and 3 until now. I did part 2 a few weeks ago, and finally doing part 3. And I had wanted to get to these. This one especially is really about travel, and he's using kind of a virtual tour through Europe as a way to prompt questions. I think in a very creative way. And yeah, since it's COVID and I can't travel, and still a little bit broke anyway. But still, I can kind of relive some memories or travel vicariously through his prompts. So without further ado, we'll continue here. So we're again. This is part 3, so we're picking up from part 2. And he says, we pick up our journey in Genoa, the birthplace of one Christopher Columbus, a UNESCO-listed World Heritage Site, the Via Garibaldi. And again, I mentioned this in the last video, last tag video that I did for this. I'm going to butcher names here. Is one of the most important streets in Genoa, and is famous for its large amount of palaces and fine architecture. Tell us about the main street in your town or city. What can you see and do there? I live in I guess you can call it a large town. Certainly not a city, but I'm in New Milford, Connecticut, and we have a very actually beautiful village green. Right down, we have Main Street flanking either side of it, one way, another side. And it's a long stretch of green. We have trees and monuments, a lot of war monuments. There's even a tank, World War II tank on the green. It's a very militaristic green. I kind of wish that we had some other non-military monuments around, especially because our town hall, which is right on the main street, it's not the same building, but is the same place where Roger Sherman lived. He's one of the founding fathers. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and before the Articles of Confederation. He basically signed every major founding document of our nation. And he was a fairly poor founding father. He was not rich. He was not like a Thomas Jefferson or anything like that. And he was a very simple individual. And he lived in town for a few years at least. And this is kind of before the Revolution that he was here. And so you can see that we have some really beautiful historic architecture along the green. There's, of course, I said the town hall. There's a library. We have restaurants, toy store, ice cream shop. There's a post office. The village green has a gazebo that people can hang out on and watch the kids climb the tank. The gazebo is it's been there for a long time. Right in the very early 1900s, there was actually a terrible fire that swept through just off of Main Street is Bank Street, which is goes because on the corner there used to be a bank. The building is still there; it's just not a bank anymore. And that whole street, Bank Street, burned down, and that gazebo was actually used as a barbershop for a while. They've kind of boarded it up and cut people's hair in there. But it's still a very beautiful town center. The Christmas season has just passed, but usually in the Christmas season, they have trees lit up all along the stretch of it. And, pre-COVID, we would have village fair days there, and vendors and outdoor concerts and everything else. So it is a very beautiful, very picturesque Main Street. And we continue on with his prompts. He says, from Genoa, we move on to Milan. And in his video, he tells a very humorous story about a woman misinterpreting what he's asking for, I think train tickets, and they end up going to the wrong place. And he asks, have you any examples of funny misunderstandings at home or abroad? I guess in excuse me, in Hungary we did. So we were in Budapest. We went to the metro, and the people working there basically tried to scam us. It was not clear when you go into the metro, because you have entrances on either side of the street, and it's not clear which way goes what. Which way, if you want to go one way in the city or if you want to go the other, which side you're supposed to be going down. So we kind of gone down one step, and there's like this little yellow line, and this woman just watched us go over the yellow line really quickly, because in order to get to the map to show the metro which side you're supposed to be on, you have to walk over this yellow line. So, and it's only like a step. That's all it was. She watched us walk down these steps, look at the map, and then we're about to go up, and then she tries asking us for our ticket, as though we had just gotten off a train there, and we're the only people there, and she watched this. So luckily, my friend, he grew up in Hungary. He left at an early age, so his Hungary's broken. His Hungarian is broken. But basically, we just refused to give them anything, and they just let us go. Yeah, that was not a humorous misunderstanding, but not even a misunderstanding. I think it was basically just a scam. But we did not, fortunately, have to pay anything, and we got out of there. And also, there was a gentleman that I was speaking to at in Hungary at a wedding, and he was basically he is a very nice person, and he was a doctor, I think in the Ukraine, and he had come down, and he was practicing his English on me, and he said that he had a joke book full of English jokes, and he was reciting these jokes to me. And there were things like, I think one of the jokes was something like, a man walks into a shoemaker, and he says, "I walked into this store, I want to be able to walk out of it." I think there was something lost in translation, and it also made me think that this book he had is maybe very, very old, because there were like cobbler jokes. And from there, he started asking me what certain phrases meant, and many of them were of a very explicit sexual nature, and he was trying to figure out which one was which. So that was an awkward conversation. But he was a very nice person. I had a great time. It was a terrific wedding. I loved that trip. Definitely one of the favorite trips I ever took. But it was it was a funny misunderstanding, I would say. He continues on. Milan is one of the fashion capitals of the world. Tell us about your fashion sense. Is fashion and style important to you? No, look at me. I just want my clothes to be clean. Clean and comfortable. I'm not a small man. So things that fit comfortably and that are clean. That's pretty much all that I care about. You can tell I don't shave. I get haircuts seasonally, generally. When I decide that I need a haircut, it usually takes me a few weeks before I get around to it. And I thought I needed a haircut for the past couple of weeks now, and I still haven't done it. So it's not that I don't do anything throughout the day, it's just I don't prioritize those things at all in my life. So no, fashion is not at all important to me. Continues on. While in Milan, it would be a great shame not to stop at the convent on the Piazza Santa Maria delle Grazie. As here you can view one of Leonardo da Vinci's most famous works, The Last Supper. Can you tell us about a particularly memorable, good or bad, meal you have had, and why it was so memorable? As far as international travel, I think the worst meal I had was we went to Paris. That was our first time in Europe, and I didn't know French, but my wife and I, we went there kind of for an extended weekend. We were still, I think I maybe had just graduated college. She was still in college, and we decided what the heck. We were able to go really cheap. We went Thanksgiving weekend when nobody was really traveling internationally. They were all traveling across the country. And it was also, shortly after the U.S. had invaded Iraq, which France did not support. So there was a lot of anti-French sentiment going around, stupid stuff like eating freedom fries instead of French fries. So we thought, hey, not a lot of Americans are going, let's go. Let's go now. And even despite that, we heard Americans on every single street corner. They were still there. But because I don't know French, I also didn't know a lot of the menus. So that became difficult. There was, fortunately, we were staying in kind of a working class area of Paris. And just below our hotel, there was basically like a deli, like a Turkish style deli. And the guy who worked there, he kind of took us under his wing, and he knew some English, and he made sure that we knew, that we got good food every single day. He asked my wife, like, "Do you like garlic?" She's like, "Yes." He's like, "Then you're getting garlic too," and he's pointing at me. But I remember we went to Père Lachaise Cemetery and walked around there. Then we got a meal at the restaurant basically across the street, and I ordered a burger. Figured American style burger. I don't know what else is on these plates, but I recognize burger and fries. I could read that at least. But it was just like, I think it's the way, in France they eat beef tartare. They like their stuff raw. And that burger was basically still bleeding, and I couldn't eat it. I don't like that at all. And they didn't have any ketchup for the fries. I had ate them with mustard, so that was just kind of a young American, not really knowing the ropes and learning the hard way. And I was kind of hungry after that, so I would kind of consider that meal mostly my fault. But I think they could have been a little more accommodating, possibly. So that was a bad tasting meal. The worst meal I've ever had traveling, though. It tasted good going down. Not so good coming up, and that was when we went to Chicago. And the night before we flew back, we ate at Red Lobster, and I'd gotten a Cajun chicken fettuccine Alfredo, and it gave me food poisoning. And so the whole flight home, I was vomiting. I had a barf bag in front of me that was leaking onto the tray. The flight attendant didn't even know what to do with me, I think. And I'm a nervous flyer, and that plane could have gone right down, and I would not have cared. It would just put me out of my misery. I did not care what happened on that plane. So that, I guess, would be the worst meal after the fact from traveling. And good meals. I had a lot of really good, fond memories of eating in Hungary. Going back to that, we did stay at a place, a sort of a small resort town called Bogac. It has hot springs there that you can go swimming in, and there were a lot of German tourists there. And we had just a really nice restaurant, had a good goulash. We sat outside on this porch overlooking this fairly quiet street, not really too quiet, but not a busy street. And it was just a really good food, fantastic meal, beautiful night. And you had these German tourists who had they were riding around on pedal cars. And every time they pass by, "Guten Abend," they're wishing us a good evening. And it was just really nice. It was just a lovely meal. I just really remember that one, that whole night really well. And some of the best food I've had, though, I think was in Spain. We were in Zaragoza, Spain, and I had an amazing fettuccine carbonara there. And then we kind of had some drunk food. It was the huevos rotos, which is like fried potatoes with egg yolk broken over it and everything. And that was just some of the best drunk food I've ever had. So those were all really good meals. Continues on. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. Of course, from Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Fair Verona is where we lay our next prompt too, as it is here you stop upon leaving Milan en route to Venice. Have you read much Shakespeare? What is your favorite play by the bard? And yeah, I read quite a bit of Shakespeare. I had read, of course, A Midsummer Night's Dream in middle school. I read Romeo and Juliet a little later on in high school, and then my senior year in high school I took just a Shakespeare class. And that's all that we did was read the plays, and then we'd watch a movie adaptation. But basically, he was a really fun teacher. But he knew that a lot of the people who signed up for that class didn't really care about Shakespeare. So he said, basically, first day, he's like, if you don't mess around, if you actually just let us read the plays, you'll get an A. We don't have to take a bunch of tests. We don't have to write essays or anything like that. He's basically said, just don't be a jerk and follow along. You'll get an A. And we did that. But fortunately, I actually liked Shakespeare. So we got through a lot of plays and, again, great discussions, the movie adaptations and everything else. My favorite play by Shakespeare is Macbeth. It kind of takes an early medieval history, bringing in supernatural elements and almost like horror elements and terrific violence and just the wonderful downfall of a figure. So yeah, I think one of the best villains in literature, I think you could say. Continuing on, Verona also has a fantastic Roman amphitheater, which plays host to an opera festival each summer. Have you visited any festivals? Size, not important. They can be music, theater, book festivals, etc. Yeah, I mean, even in our area, we have, again, pre-COVID, a lot of festivals. We still go to the Renaissance Fair every single year over in New York, which is a lot of fun. There's a, not far from us, there's a picking and fiddling festival each summer, again, pre-COVID, where it's basically just bluegrass. And, this is our area the, uh, of the United States isn't typically what you think of with bluegrass, but it's fun. I love banjo and fiddle and all that, and it's just a good time with the family. And we have a lot of, outdoor, a lot of big fall festivals and summer festivals, spring festivals, music festivals. When I was in high school, we used to have music festivals all the time that we would go up to and see a lot of bands. That was in the late '90s. Um, Traveling, I haven't been to too many festivals, but we did go to actually, once again, back in Hungary. There was this kind of big cultural festival that was going on. That was just fantastic. Uh, it was an interesting experience because my perception of the country was it was kind of rediscovering itself post-communist. A lot of the cultural things that really were pushed aside or banned outright during the communist era were being rediscovered by a whole new generation or being recaptured by an older generation. So you would have an experience where there's a couple stages at this cultural festival, and it's filled with like craft makers and stuff like that, and people dressed up traditionally, and a lot of bull whips. They're really into whips, and but you see one stage where you have these old women who were singing these songs that I was told they basically would sing when they go out to the fields and work. Um, Similar to what we would see in the United States, especially in the South among like sharecroppers and African American those who had to work the fields. And these women would just be doing these kind of traditional songs on the stage. But then if you walk across the other side of the festival, you'd hear the same songs, but they'd be sung by young people to rock music, and they'd be dancing and thrashing and stuff like that, but it's the same song. So you see them, kind of recapturing that whole essence. And that whole thing was a lot of fun. There were some weapons makers that we had fun, going and checking out. We camped out at night, in the tent. You hear people drunk all throughout the night. We were woken up in the morning by this guy. He had like one of those, not sure what you call it, but he's got the big fan on his back. He's like parasailing almost, and he's flying around. He's basically yelling in Hungarian, "Wake up, Magyars, wake up," waking everybody up in the morning. And the only negative experience of that thing is the porta potties were the absolute most rancid smell I had ever smelled in my life, and they charged you to use them. They would actually charge you a couple of florins, the currency, just to use them. If you got even close to them, you'd pass out. They were rancid. But other than that, it was a fun experience. Continue on. All right. You arrive in Venice. Venice is a Dorian Gray city. Somewhere up there in the world's attic, there's another place with the haggard, poxed, and ravaged face of an unspeakable evil. And I suspect it's Cardiff. And I think it's a great quote by A. Gill. Perhaps that is a bit harsh on poor old Cardiff, but this quotation got me thinking. What is one of the most beautiful cities you have visited, and why do you think it was so beautiful? Naturally, our next question will be one of the ugliest cities you have visited. Also, did it have any redeeming features? I guess most beautiful city, I'd still say, Paris, it's cliche, but Paris is beautiful. It really is. There's just the architecture, the wide streets, the history, all the, it had the privilege, I'd say. I'm not speaking lightly of this, but it was not bombed in World War II, and so much of it is well preserved. You could see terrific shops. It really is just a gorgeous city, I have to say, and the parks are beautiful. I also really liked Rome quite a bit. Rome's parks were not nice. Those were kind of in rough shape. The walking the crooked cobblestone streets is great in Rome, and seeing the old, of course, ruins and architecture and everything else, that was fantastic. But it wasn't a nice place to just be outdoors. But Paris was. Paris, you can just lounge and hang out, grab a bottle of wine, baguette, cheese, and, just hang out outside a lot. And I really like that. Ugliest cities. I live in Connecticut. We have some beautiful towns and villages, especially in my part of the state. I live in the Litchfield Hills, and it is really, really pretty. However, Connecticut's cities, not so much. Hartford, nothing great. New Haven, it has Yale. Yale is awesome. I mean, Yale, it feels like you just stepped into old world Europe. Beautiful architecture, awesome. But if you go a couple blocks over, you're not there anymore. You're going to turn around real quick and head back. There's some rough areas. There's a lot of very post-industrial cities in Connecticut that were once thriving, but the industry has left. And one of the ones that I think is the ugliest is Waterbury. It's maybe about a half hour's drive from me or something like that. But I hate driving through it. It is an ugly city. Last time I had to actually go through there, we had to go to one of the schools in Waterbury, and it's a very hilly city. But all along the road, one road after another, just garbage strewn. It was gross. So no, I don't like Waterbury. It's probably one of the ugliest cities that I've been in. The patron saint of Venice is Saint Mark, San Marco. The name Mark appears to be related to Mars, the god of war, and is often said that the meaning is therefore warlike. What is the meaning of your name, and do you know why you are called what you are called? Also, have you got a nickname you can share with us? So, name is Vincent, which comes from the Latin, basically, conqueror. I am actually the fifth Vincent. My father was Vincent, my grandfather was Vincent. I decided not to name my son Vincent. We named him Benjamin, and his middle name is Vincent. One of the reasons was I was in my 30s and I was still being called Little Vinny, by people, because what do I call my son at that point? And also it kept happening where the tax office and all kinds of financial, they kept confusing me with my father, and I had to constantly get that stuff straightened out. So at that point, I was just like, you know what? He doesn't have to be named Vincent. It's a perfectly good name. I like the name, but we ended up going with Benjamin instead for that. And my name actually ends up coming off as very Italian, Vincent Pisano. Although I think one of my grandfathers was just a little bit part Italian. I'm mostly actually like English, Scottish, Irish. So I have a very kind of Italian sounding name, but ethnically I'm not very Italian. So yeah, it's the story with my name. It is between 800 and, between 80 and 100 euros to hire a gondola in Venice for that romantic trip through the canals. This is pretty expensive, as you only get between 25 and 30 minutes. Yeah, no. What is the most expensive things you have done on your vacations? Alternatively, what is the cheapest? We generally just go cheap. I don't do a lot of expensive stuff at all. Whenever we've done a lot of international traveling, except for Rome and Paris weren't necessarily. We went to Hungary, went to Spain, we went down to Ecuador. We had people that we stayed with, people that we knew, so which is great. I mean, not only is it cheap, but you also are seeing, you're actually seeing the culture and the life and everything there, way more intimately than staying at a hotel. So I haven't done a lot of expensive stuff, I would say. The cheapest thing, again, I mentioned Ecuador. We were in the Andes, in a pretty small town, Payatanga. And we went out to dinner, and there were maybe at least a dozen of us out there to dinner. There was quite a few, and we all got like a chicken and rice dinner and everything like that. I think the whole thing came to less than $20. And we found out how cheap it was. My wife and I were just like, we're treating. We got this meal. So yeah, incredibly cheap. And likewise, our first night in Ecuador, we were in Guayaquil, a city along the coast. And there was a boat ride that you can take. It was kind of like, it was a motorized boat, but it made it look like an old-fashioned, sailboat, basically. And it was basically just a drinking tour. It'd take you up and down the river along Guayaquil, and it was all you can drink. Women were actually, tickets for women were cheaper than for men. But we got tickets, and we went with some friends who were from Spain, and we were down in Ecuador with them, and we had a lot to drink, a lot of alcohol, and for very, very cheap. So that was fun. Next prompt. Sadly, it doesn't appear you can take a ferry anymore from Venice to Trieste. So you hop back on the train. You arrive in Trieste, which is Italian, but it has a different feel about it. You can feel its mix of Italian, Austrian, and Southern Slav influences. Prior to World War II, the city was part of the Habsburg Austria. Its loss left Austria landlocked. How far do you live from the sea? How often do you visit the coast? I'm about 45 minutes maybe from Long Island Sound. I don't go very often. I'm not a beach person. I like walking along the ocean. I like being near the ocean, but I don't like sitting on a beach for extended periods of time. So I don't go very often. I'm much more a being in the mountains person than I am being along the coast. I mean, that being said, we take vacations. Sometimes we do go to like the coast of Maine, especially southern Maine. We used to go to South Carolina a lot, Myrtle Beach. So we have spent a lot of time on the coast, but I don't go very often. Trieste, hopefully I'm saying that right again, is home to the Victory Lighthouse, one of the tallest in the world at 223 feet. This wouldn't suit me as I suffer terribly with the fear of heights, particularly man-made heights. Yes, I agree. Have you got any phobias? Yeah, that one. What is the highest place you have visited, man-made or otherwise, not including air travel, of course? When I was a kid, I went up to the Empire State Building, up to the top of that. So did that with my grandfather. When we were in Hungary, in Eger, they had the tallest minaret. Not tall, sorry, the northernmost minaret. It's basically that area used to be controlled by the Turks. So that remains from, that minaret is at least 500 years old. And we said, okay, let's go up, let's go check it out. And we were waiting in line. It was a very short line, but it was taking a long time, and we weren't sure why. When we finally got in there, we realized why. Because it's a one-way trip up that minaret, and it's very steep, very slippery. You can very easily fall if you weren't careful. Then when you get to the top of the minaret, you're standing there. The railing is only at your knees, and you basically have to stay with your back to the minaret. But you can't just like say, "Oh, this isn't very good. I'm going to go down." No, because you have people behind you. So in order to go down again, you have to go all the way around this skinny minaret, wait for everybody to get out this way, and then go down. And by then, my knees are like shaking, and that was not fun for me. I mean, it was a cool experience. It was cool to go up something that old, but all I could think of is that my name was going to be in the paper next day, like an American tumbles off a minaret and dies. I think in the U.S. you would not see people allowed up that thing. Certainly not. And man-made heights, again, being in Ecuador in the Andes, those are roads going through the Andes. They're not always very wide. There's some landslides that we saw that had recently occurred, blocking roadways. And we went to a place called Baños, where we saw waterfalls, and we drove like go-karts around the town, and that was a lot of fun. But then on our way back to Payatonga, we were driving at night through the Andes in the fog. And that is if somebody hit you and you went off the road, it is way down. Those mountains are like vertical. So that was one of the more scary rides, car rides that I've been on. Continuing on, from Trieste, you travel on to, I'm not going to try and say that. One of the sites, there is the Triple Bridge, a grouping of 3 bridges across this river. Some say good and bad things come in threes. Are you superstitious? Have you got favorite trilogy, either film or book? I wouldn't say I'm superstitious. I do occasionally knock on wood, but that's about as far as I ever get. My favorite film trilogy, there's quite a few that I like. I don't know which was my absolute favorite. I mean, maybe Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite, but I do like Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, the Romero Dead trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Evil Dead trilogy, I'd say, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, that's a lot of fun. Indiana Jones, before the Crystal Skull type stuff, the original 3 was a good trilogy. Back to the Future, I think it's still a fun trilogy, so there's some good ones out there. Books, I haven't read too many trilogies, so I mean, Lord of the Rings would, I guess, be my favorite. And I did like His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I like that trilogy also. And from here, you catch a train to Zagreb, Croatia, where we will pause for now before picking up our journey next time. Until then, please tag some people. Um, so again, I'm many months late with this, and I don't think that he has made a fourth one yet. I do hope he does. I do think these are actually a lot of fun. So anyway, if you stuck around this long, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it and it wasn't torturous. And thanks to Mark for making this, and he originally tagged me as well, so thank you for that. And as usual, thank you, BookTube.